It's Kathy from the North Carolina Zoo, here to talk about wild about nature. The other day I shared with you a pollinator activity. We talked about what pollinators are, what pollen is, and why it's important. Hopefully some of the older kids were able to make their own pollinator, and I do want to see those when you get them made. Younger kids, I wanted to put some activities up for you as well, but I've got a really cool demonstration I would like to show you. Have you ever wondered why bees buzz? Well, this demonstration should show you why. We're going to pretend that my cinnamon, because it's a nice dark fine powder like pollen, cinnamon, loaded in coffee stir sticks. Coffee stir sticks full of cinnamon. It's going to pretend to be our flower, the part of the flower that holds the pollen. Then my tuning fork, which when you strike the tuning fork, it vibrates and makes a noise. This is going to be my bee. So I'm going to strike my bee down here. It's going to vibrate, and the bee is going to immediately fly to the part of the flower that holds the pollen, and you watch and see what happens. I'm getting ready to make my bee buzz, and you watch what happens when the buzz and flower connect. Did anybody see anything? Well, I saw, because this tuning fork vibrates, because noise really is a vibration, when it touched the part of the flower, that made that vibrate, and the pollen actually came out of the straw. So bees buzz to help them get that pollen. It makes the flower release the pollen, so it's easier for the bee to collect it on this little furry body. Let me try the second one and see if it gets a little better effect, or maybe you weren't paying attention on the first one. So again, cinnamon is the pollen, the little stir stick is the part of the flower with the pollen, tuning fork is the bee. There's a little bit of a vibrating noise, like a buzz, and the powder came out. The pollen was released. I'll do the third one just in case you missed it. I'll move it around so it's closer to my bee. So we're going to watch that right there, the part of the flower with the pollen. So, what do you think? Now you know why bees buzz. Pretty cool. So, that's a tricky activity, getting all that cinnamon down in the little straws. But something you can do at home is pretty easy to help little ones understand how bees work, how pollinators work. So, what I did, I just took some water, some yellow food coloring, and put it in my little fake flowers here. But you can use little cups or glasses, and the children can just pretend those are flowers. Then they get to pretend to be a bee. If you've got a turkey baster, great. Maybe you've got a children's medicine dropper, that works just as well. And what you're going to do is, it might be a little messy, so I have to be able to be okay with the mess. The child will learn how to squeeze the bulb and raise some of the nectar up out of the flower into we'll call this the bee's nectar belly. They actually have a special belly, or a second belly, where they don't digest their food, and they bring it back to the hive. And then when they take it to the hive, the bees in the hive will actually take that nectar, and guess what they turn it into? Honey. So your child can just do a little hand-eye coordination, understanding how to squeeze the bulb, and that pulls up some of the nectar, and then they fly and put it into the hive where they can turn it into honey. And they can just take turns going back and forth until all the liquid is transferred. So that gives them a little visual of how that works, and also gives those little hand muscles some exercise, because making those hand muscles work a little bit like that actually helps with pre-writing skills, because all those little bones and muscles need to work together, and the coordination. So that's one activity for young ones. Another one is, again, using some of the hand-eye coordination. I needed some little yellow pom-poms. I have lots of them at the zoo, but I didn't have any here at the house, and I didn't want to go out and get yellow pom-poms. That's not really an essential thing. So I made some. I took some of my white cotton balls and some of my yellow food coloring, and I made some little yellow pom-poms. And I've loaded some into, I've got some little cupcake holders that look like flowers. You may have some solid cupcake holders, Or you could just use a muffin tin and say, pretend those are flowers. Your child may have some paper, they could decorate them. All different ways of doing that. But what we're going to do, depending on what you may just have some regular old tweezers or tongs. They're going to fly into the flower, pretend to be a bee again, collect some of the pollen bits, and take it back to the hive. I just took some paper and made some little hexagons to represent the construction of the hive. And children can just take that pollen back and forth from the flower into the hive. Again, just some simple coordinated activities, but again, exercising those hands for those pre-writing skills. And also makes a visual of visiting the flowers, taking it back to the hive. Then the last one. So I've got some Kool-Aid, different colors. This kind of shows how when the pollen travels on the bee and goes from flower to flower, there's an exchange happening. So some orange, some purple, some yellow. So you can, if you don't have a lot of a different colored Kool-Aid, you can use Jello, Tang, something like that, just so you've got some different colors just to show the mix. Then I do have some white cotton balls, which I've gotten wet, and we're going to pretend, all right, this is the bee traveling to the first flower, and when it touches it, it gets some of the orange. And then it flies to the second flower and touches it. Now it's gotten some of the purple, and the colors are mixing. Now it's going to fly to the third one. Let's see what happens. Oh, and that was the yellow. So now we've got 3 different colors here where we have mixed up the pollen by visiting the different flowers. And that just gives a little messy but fun demonstration of how pollination works. Thanks a bunch, and hopefully you'll have a chance to try some of these activities. If you want to post some of the pictures of what you've done in the comments, that'd be great. And I don't know if you were with us on Earth Day, we tried an activity called making a pollination pod. I made my pollination pod and I put it in a planter, because I know not everybody has a yard or a garden they can plant their pollination pod in. I put mine in a planter, and you can see my little ball right there where it was some of the clay and some of the dirt and had the seeds all in it, and I put it in here, I kind of pitched it in there. And I've got little baby pollination plants all everywhere in there, all tons of little baby plants that I will, it looks like probably too many to keep in my planter, so I will transplant some outside, but I'll be able to feed some of our pollinators. Isn't that great? So if you got any pictures, if you made a pollination pod, please share those too in the comments. Thanks, and we'll see you another time.